Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with another online multiplayer video. Today we're going to be going through a revamped Flashpoint team. And this is actually inspired by a comment, which we'll read here and then sort of come back to in between commenting on the fights.
Yeah, it felt like it needed more space than a regular Q&A.
Yeah, so user Johnny Sin says, "Hey BDCKR, what are your thoughts on swapping Batman and Aquaman's roles on the Flashpoint team? Batman characters can shatter multiple pieces of gear with their special one, so you'd have a much higher chance of shattering Astral Harness and speeding up fights. Also, when you consider how people normally structure teams, I most commonly see tanks in the first spot. Since Batman's specials can disable healing, you can easily finish them off with Deathstroke without much difficulty. This will most likely be helpful against characters like Raven, Prime, or Black Knight Flash. Aquaman's basic attacks are faster and easier to juggle with, so he is more than capable of being the basic damage dealer. The largest drawback I see is that you don't get the benefit of bleed that Aquaman gives, but the pros outweigh the cons in my opinion. It's also worth mentioning that since Batman doesn't need the Quake engine, he has a free gear spot to use any way you want."
Just about this fight, didn't look like there's anything special. Deathstroke all the way, and that's what it is. So I think this is a brilliant question. So despite the fact that we actually made a series of videos on Flashpoint Batman to demonstrate how he could be the basic damage dealer, tank, or specialist, we've gotten into the habit of using him as a basic damage dealer. Mm-hmm. And that might be the result of using him so much off the Flashpoint team as part of our Justice League team, since he's the only one that has boosted crit damage. So the fight number one was not interesting. Fight number two, still no Astral Harness, which is going to be the important thing as we talk more about it. So there is a revive from the Fourth World gear set, but it's actually better not to disable that because you can get more splash damage. So because we use him as part of our Justice League team, he's the only one that has a boosted crit damage, so it would be a complete waste on his own not to make him the basic damage dealer. Mm-hmm. So on a Flashpoint team, though, there's no such limitation. All right, so look at that. Teammates coming in with 0 health, which is the point of splash damage.
Yeah, just sort of ridiculous. They come in and they're already gone.
Yeah, so Deathstroke is the same usual gear loadout. Tentu Totem, Master's Death Cart, League of Assassin's Knives, which we showed already. Yeah, still no Astral Harness. Okay, Aquaman now has Batman's basic loadout with Astral Harness, 1 basic damage boost that has a crit chance boost, mm-hmm. and 1 basic damage boost with a heal on special 1. And Batman has Ra's al Ghul's Scimitar, Claw of Horus, and as mentioned, we've got another slot free, so we're using Necron's Scythe. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be... I mean, we could use the overpowered super to make him good at basic damage by topping up his crit chance instead. It could almost be anything else. I mean, we tried Enchantress, but it's not good enough because the opportunities you use 2 bars of power and still no Astral Harness. But
you're talking about using Enchantress gear.
Yeah, you need to take advantage of that to break multiple gears. You need to have 2 bars, mm-hmm. special 1 and then special 1 again. And the problem is because he has such a long latency period after special 1 that you can't time it right consistently to break multiples to time the skulls with the special 1. But Necron's Scythe is a perfect counter for when the opponent has Killing Joker in first slot. So it buys you an extra meat shield to protect you from 1 super, and Aquaman still has his first vulnerability on tagging from the Astral Harness for another super. Mm-hmm. Let's see, that was uneventful too. So we're going to head into another fight and see. I mean, really, I think the point about the Astral Harness is the most important one. And, there's Killing Joker. And as I just mentioned, right, we get a revive for later if we use Batman to knock him out, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's not like they always do supers anyways.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, Astral Harness in the first slot, it wastes a lot of our time getting through the invulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. Unlike Astral Harness in any other slot, which we can... and because Deadshot did not do a super, it's actually probably better that Aquaman took this one, because it's possible that with a special, it would have, if we hadn't blocked it, might have done actually more damage on Batman.
Yeah.
So normally, if Astral Harness is not in first slot, we use Deathstroke to get past a bunch of invulnerabilities by doing splash damage. So they tag in with lower health and, 1 or 2 fewer invulnerabilities.
Yeah, we basically just bypass that initial one and hopefully trigger their second or third one at the same time.
Right. And increasing the chance of disabling Astral Harness is great. Unfortunately, I don't think we see it in these fights, and I'm not even sure that he can disable more than 1 gear with 1 special one. I think maybe his chance of disabling is a little bit higher than 75% because of the multiple hits, because it does feel like he's disabling gear almost every time.
Yeah, but it never feels like he's disabling 2 gear.
Right. And it might be just when you feel like it is, say with the revive on 4th World gear set, it wouldn't be disabling more than 1 gear. It would be his Dark Justice triggering where it stops the revives.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, in every other non-Astral Harness situation, we don't want to be disabling revives. Deathstroke does splash damage. The faster the first opponent dies, the less splash damage we do, which means we're actually not unhappy when Raven triggers her passive and swaps health, because it's not like he's vulnerable. He does one special, he still has another bar for another special one.
And the important part is, even if he gets knocked out, the extra opportunity to deal that splash damage is actually more valuable than keeping him in for really nothing but an arbitrary reason, unless you're doing Phantom Zone, right?
Right. And so we're looking at this team, and it's meant to be not just change for the sake of change, but potentially an improvement, and still no Astral Harness. Okay, so Aquaman's damage is less than Batman's, and I think the difference is maybe about 5%, which thankfully doesn't seem to make much difference in how fast Aquaman can finish off an opponent using basic attacks. So that's, I'd say, almost a wash. I'd say that's neutral.
Yeah, it's close enough that it doesn't make a noticeable difference when you're actually playing.
The biggest problem, if we're going to judge this team by how fast it can finish, is that Batman's Special 1 animation takes longer than Aquaman's Special 1 animation. And it doesn't seem like much, and in most cases it's worth it to disable more gears if we're thinking about the kind of gears that will slow down the fight, like Astral Harness. Mm-hmm. Or even like later on, like a revive on the last guy is a different consideration than a revive on the first guy. Mm-hmm. Right? No splash damage to consider. And maybe we'll do another ultimate run. I mean, we got through that one pretty quick. The timing seems like it's as good as the regular Flashpoint team.
Yeah, definitely not like noticeably longer.
Yeah. So if there's going to be any advantage in getting rid of Astral Harness, it really is going to happen in the first slot. But because the animation, it takes longer, you can't just do it by default and start off with the special one, whatever the other gears too. So, and actually that means there's another issue, right? Because we only want Batman's, unlike Aquaman where we can just do the special one with impunity because it's just so fast, we need to look at the first slot every time to see, is there an Astral Harness to plan a quick tag in versus a quick special one to try to disable it. And I think I mentioned too, because he's got I call it the refractory period after doing special one, where he can't block end lag. So the end lag on his special one is worse than Aquaman's special one. So that, let's say you did get 2 bars of power, it's going to be hard to, unless you can just tag him out right away, it's going to be hard to actually block it and do the timing so that you can actually, let's say you were going to try Enchantress's gear to get the extra gear shatters. And see, that didn't make much of a difference. I mean, whether that was a combo from Aquaman or Batman, it would have finished the fight, right?
Yeah.
I think probably the less obvious thing, is there anything interesting there? Nothing interesting there. So the less obvious thing is trying to remember who to tag in when you want basic damage versus gear shattering. Mm-hmm.
And that one's more of just a question of what you're used to, more than it is a question of who's better.
I think that's probably true for a lot of people. I think it's because Flashpoint Batman was the first one released. He was a challenge character that most people got used to using him as a basic damage dealer because that's what he was probably best for. And it's like a lot of those other things where, because it starts off a certain way, if you come to it late, it may not be obvious why it has to be like that. Mm-hmm. It's just that that's how it sort of evolved organically. All right, so Arkham Knight Batman is always interesting, especially with Arkham Knight Batgirl, who makes it more of a challenge. It doesn't change the approach of the fight, because if Arkham Knight Batman has crit immunity, he has less chance of having 2 bars of power, so he's not as dangerous to us. And if he has he doesn't have the 2 bars of power, even if he didn't have crit immunity, we're just better off finishing him as quickly as possible, so that when Arkham Knight Batgirl tags in, she's less likely to have power, which is when she's most dangerous. She stuns you, and if they geared her out with Cloak of Destiny or Necron Scythe,
then she kills you.
Yeah, and she might kill a whole bunch of our teammates if she's got any splash damage. I mean, that really is it. If she's got League of Assassin's Knives, that's one less slot to have a bar of power.
Yeah.
If she doesn't have it, then if she knocks out Deathstroke, that's okay. The other 2 guys have enough offensive potential. Yeah, so nothing special. Raven Prime is practically no health when she tags in, if we do this right and we do enough splash damage, right? So we can actually bypass her swap, or by the time she tags in, it won't matter anyways, because we'll still be 3-1.
Yeah, you can either just knock her out in one hit or swap and burn her down quick a couple times. Yeah.
So it's an interesting question. I think the question originally was brilliant because it's thoughtful in a way that I like. But ultimately, you see
there we go, no health, so there's no sweat happening here.
Right.
Theoretically, unless we dealt half a damage.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, theoretically, the team is great. It does offer improvement, but practically, because we've done our job right. Finally, Astral Harness. Because we've done our job right, which is we've said all along, our plan is get maximum battle points, face the fewest number of Astral Harnesses that we can. We kept them all at Elite 5, and we're not seeing a lot of Astral Harness. This is the first one in first slot that we've seen.
Yeah, and sort of the second ultimate. The hidden point of facing as few Astral Harnesses as possible is to have fights be as quick as possible.
And this is the other problem, too. This Flashpoint team, to me, is the fastest team, bar none. So if you're going to be seeing any improvement, potentially the improvement is going to be relatively small. And the improvement is going to be in a small number of situations where Astral Harness is there.
Yeah.
And I just think...
Because even like a 10% improvement in time, right? If you're talking about long fights, that's a way higher amount of time saved versus with this, it's pretty much the least amount of time. So it's going to be the least effect shaving, every X percentage off of your average time.
And we should probably mention, too, that it was obvious that it didn't shatter, right? Killer Frost complicated things in this fight because Deathstroke started off with a bit more than 1 bar of power instead of 2, but it was worth the attempt to try to get rid of Arkham Knight and his Astral Harness.
Yeah.
But it didn't shatter. And using Aquaman as your basic damage dealer isn't any problem. And I will say that my own bias is that I feel like the rhythm of Batman's basics I like better than Aquaman, probably only because I'm more used to using it.
Yeah, maybe just the familiarity thing.
Yeah.
Again, but that has real noticeable impact, and it's hard to quantify it.
Yeah. And I just want to point out the reason for doing a swipe combo with Batman was just to bypass Blackest Night Marching Manhunter's first defensive coloring, where he does less damage. So I just want to have the best chance of finishing him off with just the 1 bar of power.
Yeah. Especially because you also have that splash damage, so
yeah.
You'd sort of be getting dinked twice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so still no Astral Harness. And it's not even like we're not facing Astral Harness that much. It's that if it's in first slot is where this team, I think, potentially shines a lot more. Mm-hmm. And this is the last fight of a second ultimate. So, again, because Astral Harness there doesn't change our strategy. Arkham Origins Deathstroke has the Astral Harness. So, potentially we buy a little bit of time, we tag in Batman, and we try to... Well, if he doesn't get knocked out, we will try to shatter the Astral Harness. Something shattered. And it looks like it was just the one thing. Yeah, and I mean, really, it's not making much of a difference.
Yeah. Oh. So that's not bad. That splash damage getting him low, right? That's his last...
Yeah,
there we go. His last Astral Harness.
We can see that it doesn't make much of a difference in the final outcome of the fight. So
yeah, maybe shaving a few seconds there.
Maybe. So the time is what? We're still just under 15 minutes, which is not unusual for a double ultimate. So what did we learn? So this team is mostly just as good as the regular Flashpoint team. Given matchmaking and our current promotions, Astral Harness doesn't show up enough in first slot, which is the main reason, trying to avoid facing Astral Harness, why we kept the Ultimate Elite 5. And Batman doesn't shatter enough to make an appreciable difference in speed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the interesting thing is gearing Necron Scythe, which we could actually do if we were using Aquaman, but we haven't, only because we like bleeding him out. But in winning it matters, but in speed it doesn't. And we could just as easily do that with Aquaman if we had it the other way. It's handy in general, but definitely makes facing Killing Joke Joker, which is the other time waster, if we face a Killing Joke Joker in first slot, means that we're not too worried about just getting rid of them.
Yeah, for sure. There we go. Any other closing thoughts, or you think that's just about it?
Great question. Thank you very much, Johnny Sin.
Yeah. So there we go. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.